Hey, welcome back and thanks for watching. I did want to provide an update to the customer support issue that I had before. You could kind of call it a debacle, somewhere between issue and debacle. If you saw the video or didn't see the video, I'll put a card above. Basically, I had a defective Arcade1up Star Wars yoke, completely unusable. One of the 4 buttons was missing, and if you have that cabinet, you really need all 4 buttons because pressing all 4 simultaneously is how you reset the games. So to navigate the system menu, you have to have all 4 buttons. So long story short, cabinet was unusable. And I was waiting on a replacement, but just getting no response from customer support. So I did the video, and shortly thereafter, Arcade1up did reach out. Got to cover the positive with the negative. They did reach out and clearly made it a priority to replace the part. So I did get a couple phone calls from one of the representatives. It seemed like somebody who worked for the company and not maybe one of the outsourced customer support agents. I got very good service from that gentleman. And within a week, I had the new yoke, works perfectly, everything's great. I kind of took that as, yeah, okay, I appreciate it. I'm obviously happy to get the replacement, but it's probably just because I did this video that it got elevated. But around the same time, the more normal customer support reached out about an issue I've had on the books for longer. So probably a month and a half, 2 months, my plexiglass with my cocktail cabinet came scratched. Now, that's not a big deal. I can still use the cabinet. It's not like the Star Wars where it's totally unusable. So, I didn't think it was worth making a video of. Honestly, if they had never sent me a new plexiglass, I can live with that. It's just not the end of the world. But they reached out, they followed up. That's now in motion. I don't have a replacement yet, but as far as I know, it is being sent. And it made me wonder, maybe their customer support overall is being improved. Kind of curious what your experience is. So let me know in the comments if you guys are getting, any quicker resolution on your customer support tickets where they may be just overloaded with Christmas season and everybody having their new cabs. But that's all I have on that front. Just wanted to give you a quick update, and I hope very much that your cabinets are getting fixed as they need to be within warranty and all of that. So with all that said, on to Star Wars. Now, there have been a lot of really good reviews already posted about this, and I plan to have mine up at least a month ago. So I know I'm late to the game. Console Kits did a huge video on this. I think he was the first out and did a really good job reviewing it. So, I still feel like I ought to put my hat in the ring and give you guys my thoughts on the cabinet, especially because I like it so much. So it's just fun to think about it and talk about something if you really enjoy it. Believe it or not, despite the name, hyping something up is actually more fun than criticizing. So I wanted to talk you through some of the history of the Atari Star Wars games, and I had to educate myself for this because, to be honest, when I was growing up, my arcade did not have a Star Wars cabinet, and the first Star Wars arcade game, the only one that I can ever remember playing, was Trilogy by Sega, and I love that game, and everybody loves that game.
Obi-Wan has taught you well.
And hopefully someday we get one from these guys from Arcade1up. But I didn't know Atari did these cabinets. I never knew there was a vector game. So I did a little bit of research, and the original Star Wars was released in 1983, and it came in 2 formats. It came in a traditional stand-up cab, which is what we have now from Arcade1up, and it also came in a sit-down cockpit cabinet. So it makes sense that this would be the first cabinet where Arcade1up releases that bench attachment to sort of recreate the cockpit feel. Basically, it was a great looking machine, and anyone who has seen the Arcade1up version knows that not only did Arcade1up do a really good job on the product, which you can kind of see behind me, but the original design itself was just so striking, and so they had really good source material to work with. Now, if you could think back to 1983, this cabinet actually released specifically in May of 1983. What else hit in May of 1983? Return of the Jedi. So if you can imagine Star Wars hype being at an all-time high.
We're just fanatics out here waiting on Return of the Jedi. 3 years in the making. We're waiting for this.
Some people don't idolize Darth Vader like I do. See, I want him to get Luke. And I think that that Luke will destroy Darth Vader.
I guess Darth Vader will die. I'm not sure. I hope he doesn't.
Empire killed it. Everybody loved it. Don't listen to people that say Empire had a lot of haters when it released. That just wasn't true. It was overwhelmingly popular with the fans, and people could not wait to see how this series concluded. Right? The first mega blockbuster trilogy, breaking new ground. And then, oh, by the way, there's this new game from Atari that I can recreate parts of the original movie in the arcade. It was a huge hit. It sold over 12,000 cabinets in the first year alone, and that wasn't even a full year since it came out a few months into the year. Next up, Empire Strikes Back. Ironically, this was the third game to release, and I had to double check my source on that because it seems so weird. Jedi looks so much more modern. It has more traditional, more contemporary raster graphics, but Empire looks more or less like the original Star Wars. It still uses vector graphics, but it came out after Empire. It came out in 1985. All the movies are out and all the other Star Wars cabs are out, so it's a little late to the party. Empire, though, was interesting in that it was only available as an upgrade package for the original Star Wars cabinet. I've read a lot of people say they've never seen an Empire in arcades. It did not sell very well. At this point, people are moving on to more modern looking cabinets, or maybe they're still getting good traction with the Star Wars cabinet, but very few arcades were in that middle ground where they were interested in showcasing an older looking game, but they also wanted to shell out money to do so. For that reason, it's really cool that Arcade1up has re-released this, since this is a game that most people never got to play. Now, the graphics are a little bit upgraded from the original Star Wars. There's more detail in the enemies models, particularly, and the gameplay is more varied with a total of 4 stages before the wave resets. And that's ultimately my biggest complaint with these games, is just the limited replayability, because at the end of the day, you're just playing 1 to 4 stages, and that's the whole game. Now, Jedi, released in 1984, and like I mentioned, uses the more conventional raster graphics that you would have seen in the mid-80s. The same technology basically you'd get in a home console. Now, I misspoke previously in an earlier video saying all 3 of these videos are mono. It turns out Jedi was actually stereo, so it's quite cool that they've given us stereo speakers here. Perfect fit. So one of the things I complained about previously, that this was not completely hardware authentic, you can take that off the table. They actually did a good job giving us stereo with a game that is stereo. Just like Star Wars and the Empire add-on, Jedi was available in 2 variants, a cockpit and a sit-down model. The cockpit looks gorgeous. I'll put a picture up for you to check out. The stand-up cabinet is a little weird. It's shaped like an AT-ST, basically, and I think it's kind of ugly. All right, so let's cover what I like, and there's a lot here because this cabinet really is cool. Because of the Star Wars cab, we now know, and we did not know this before, we now know that Arcade1up is capable of producing a near replicate level of attention to detail with giving you an authentic looking product. The controls feel very good despite being unique and probably pretty expensive to recreate. The cabinet shape is just like it was in the arcade, which I love. Wish we got that on all the cabs now. The marquee looks really good. It doesn't look washed out at all. And they even adjusted the riser height so that the control panel now sits at the proper height. It's different than the other games because we've got that angled control panel. We've got that yoke we have to be able to feel. If that was at the wrong height, it would have completely ruined this cabinet. So props to Arcade1up for retooling their riser and for the first time ever giving us that little extra height that we so badly needed here. Each of the 3 included games has detailed menu settings, and they completely nail it. This really, if this was on every Arcade1up, it would be a huge win. The most important part, the adjustable vector line settings. I've played with this, and I personally like the bold setting over the others. The fact that you can change them is great. I do like bold over the standard view. So it's just awesome that we have that level of control. There's another setting I never knew I wanted, but now I kind of want it on all my cabinets. You can toggle the audio on and off for the attract screen. So if you just want this to be in the background and silent, you can do that. If you want the audio to give you, that old school arcade vibe, lively sense that you'd get walking into an arcade, which is what I like, you can turn that on. So that's awesome. And finally, you can reset the high score, which you all know what that means. But that's really cool. I mean, I remember when these cabinets first came out, and many of them didn't even record a high score after you turned it off. So props to Arcade1up for giving us a ton of detail here, and really props to Code Mystics, who Arcade1up hired to handle the software. I said it on my last video, but I'll say it again. They killed it here. I hope there's a big future with them for doing retro game emulation. I think M2 has a little bit of competition. And as I mentioned, the fact that we get to play Empire for the first time for me, but even for the first time for a lot of older arcade goers that never had this because it just wasn't a common option to play in the arcade. So what didn't I like? And this is not a big list, and I'm honestly kind of nitpicking here because this is a cool product, but I have the word critics in my name, so I gotta come with something. My only fault here is actually with the games themselves. You can clear the Star Wars, a wave or the whole level of Star Wars in a few minutes. It just doesn't take that long. And again, I mentioned this earlier, I had never played these games before, total noob. I get the cabinet, I play Star Wars, I beat the first level, blow up the Death Star, and I know that's the end of Star Wars, but I'm thinking, this is awesome. What are they going to do next in this game? And it just resets, and I thought, yeah, I get it, that's the end of the movie, but at the same time, you kind of wish there was a little more there. But this was the early 80s, memory was at a premium, and these games feature a lot of spoken dialogue, especially Empire. And that's pretty cool, having a game this old talk to you in a way that's clear and actually sounds like the movie.
Luke, trust me.
Yahoo! You're all clear, kid.
It adds a lot to the ambiance that these games ultimately nailed, and making you feel like you were part of the Star Wars universe. And I think we take that for granted now with modern games. Of course you feel like, you know, you're in that universe that it's set in. It's also realistic. A game this old with very few colors to work with and just some vector lines, I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. So I don't want to criticize the games too much, but at the end of the day, they're just pretty simple. Jedi, with its raster graphics, its isometric view, it's very different from the other two games, so it does offer that gameplay variety I'm talking about. But something about this game honestly gives me a headache. I have a hard time playing it. It's the fast motion on screen and then being set at an angle. It's kind of like Paperboy in that you only have a small part of the screen you can actually navigate. It's not the whole screen. And something about those trees whizzing by, it just, I don't know, it gives me an eye headache. I haven't played it much. I don't think I've beaten the second stage. There are 4 stages total. I think I would have liked this game more maybe if it was a vertical orientation, more like a conventional shoot 'em up. Not trying to rewrite history here. I know it is what it is, and this game is a nice piece of gaming history. I'm glad it's here. Honestly, I'll probably just tough it out and have the headache and play it a bit more, but 9 times out of 10 when I fire up this cabinet, I am playing Star Wars or Empire. So, final word on this cabinet that's been out for a while. If you've been watching this long, I very much appreciate it because, again, I know you guys already know the deal with this cabinet, but I did want to give you my perspective. Arguably, this is the best Arcade1up yet. The only reason I don't elevate it to that top position is because the games just aren't that varied and they're short in length. Alternatively, I could get the cocktail cabinet and have a ton of varied games and games that can take hours to beat each. But when it comes to recreation of the original, these guys crushed it in a way that none of the other cabinets Arcade1up touches. It almost makes up for how badly Disney ruined Star Wars. Now we have an old school George Lucas era, pre-prequels era Star Wars product in your house, and honestly, that's worth the price of admission. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor, hit like, leave a comment. Those engagement points help YouTube know to promote the video. These small channels, and I'm sure you watch a lot of us, we need those engagements to really get the word out about our channels. We're not a big corporate channel. We're not going to get that automatic push. So if you did enjoy this and you want to help get the word out, please do me a favor and hit that like button. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to, and enable notifications so you know when we have a new video out. Appreciate it, guys. We'll catch you next time.